Okay. There wasn't anybody else on the phone, no?
That was it.
Okay. My name is Clint Emerson. I work as a regional botanist for the Pacific Northwest Forest Service, so Oregon and Washington National Forests, of which obviously Umpqua, the Umpqua is one of them. And yeah, I have a long history working on the Umpqua and kind of helped start the native plant program there in 1997. So I did work extensively recently on fires. There was 140,000+ acres on the Umpqua this season, and unfortunately, the native seed stocks that we used to have are no longer necessarily available. There's just not enough seed to go around these days. And so we had about 1,000 pounds or something this year, and that was it. And we probably could have used close to 3,000 to 5,000 pounds. So I'm really happy to see this effort. I hope it helps. And then one last announcement is that we did fill the Umpqua National Forest botanist position, and we filled it with somebody who has some pretty good experience. One of their main sets of skills are with this native plant stuff. So thank you.
Okay, let's go with Allison Manwaring.
Hi everyone, I'm Allison. I'm a fish and wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service here in Roseburg. And a big part of my job is working with private landowners on habitat restoration projects through the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. That's it.
Thanks, Allison. How about Callie?
Hi, everybody. Callie Davenport with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Like Allison, I am with the Partners program. I'm the state coordinator. I sit up here in Portland, but I do a lot of my on the ground stuff prior to Allison in the Umpqua. I guess from one perspective, this meeting is a direct result. I'm really happy with the participation we've got from me helping to Johnny Appleseed native plant partnerships all over the place. So based on the success of Catherine and Tula and others at the Understory Initiative down in the Rogue Native Plant Partnership, or the successes of the Rogue Native Partnership, I guess I took it upon myself and others, with the help from others, to kind of bring that, ask Catherine and company to bring that blueprint north and into the Umpqua. So I'm again really thrilled to see that we good participation, and I hope we get some good collaboration, some good leveraging, get some native seeds produced in the Umpqua and help each other out on the native plant side of things. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Callie. Next is Sam Freeman.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm the botanist. Hi. So I'm U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, like Callie and Allison. And I work mainly with recovering and restoring the endangered and imperiled plant species in the Southwest Oregon area. And the primary plants I work with in Douglas County are rough popcorn flower and Kincaid's lupin. And we recently had a meeting discussing how we're going to maybe plant Kincaid's lupin in different sites at Douglas County. And yeah, so I'll Next person.
Thank you, Sam. I've got Haley Smith next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Haley Smith. I'm the seed program coordinator at Dorena Genetic Resource Center, which is a nursery on the Umpqua National Forest. Some of you guys have gotten some native plants with us. So a lot of our work is related to white pine blister rust breeding programs, as well as Port Orford cedar breeding programs, but we also do a significant amount of restoration work throughout the Pacific Northwest, which requires us to collect, clean, store, and develop germination protocols for a lot of native plant species and a lot of novel ones. And we also maintain a seed bank on site.
Fantastic. Good to have you here, Haley. Next, I've got Justy Grinter.
Hi, I'm Justy Grinter. I am a botanist and the invasive plants lead here in Roseburg, Oregon for the BLM. I'm going to keep my introduction short and sweet. So hi.
Awesome. Okay, Donna and Richard, I'll let you decide who goes first.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Donna Rawson. I'm currently the secretary on the board for the Umpqua Chapter Native Plant Society. So we've been wanting something like this to happen for quite a while, so we just jumped at the chance to find out more when Callie said it could be happening.
I'm Richard Rawson. I'm on the board of directors for Douglas Small Woodlands Association. That's it.
And we're living in Oakland, but our meetings and things takes place in Roseburg, so we're kind of central.
Hello, this is Amy.
Hi, Emma. Do you want to tell us
Hi, Emma.
Hi.
who you are and what you're associated with?
I am with Umpqua Valley Chapter. You are I think you're being what do you say? I can't think of the word, but anyhow, we're taking over here. No, not really. I'm actually out in 10 Mile right now, just getting out of a funeral, and our oldest member of the Native Plant Society died, so we had a really nice funeral. And I just now come out in the parking lot and didn't think I'd get you because I'm very remote, but there you are, and here I am. I'm done. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you. Glad you could join us.
Yes.
Next person up is Rhonda Black.
Hi, I'm Rhonda with Umpqua Soil and Water Conservation District. Anyhow, I'm just interested in learning more about the native plants situation, and because we'll be needing native plants in the future, and glad to be a part of this.
Awesome. Good to have you here, Rhonda. And next is Audrey Squires.
Hey everyone, I work for the National Forest Foundation, but I'm located here in Roseburg, Glide area. I've been in this job a little over a year. I'm the Umpqua Restoration Program Coordinator, and I work directly with the Umpqua National Forest, primarily focused in the North Umpqua watershed. And one of the things that relates to this native plant piece is that I help with implementing restoration projects, and so I've been trying to incorporate native plantings into other kinds of projects. And so like a road decommissioning project where we'll plant the stream crossings afterwards and things like that. And then before this, I worked at the Middle Fork Willamette Watershed Council. So I had experience with the native plant partnership up there, which was just so helpful in finding plants and especially finding like different species, last minute plants as well. Anyway, so I'm excited that this is coming to the Umpqua. Thanks.
Thank you. It's great to have such a diversity of experience and people on board. Alexis Larson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis Larson. I'm the Native Seed Partnership Coordinator for the Institute for Applied Ecology up here in Corvallis. This is one of our fields of Oregon iris behind me when we first started it a couple years ago. So I coordinate that Willamette Valley Partnership right now, which was established in 2012. So we've been around for a while. But we're also developing a coastal partnership, and I've been working with Catherine and Vanessa with the Understory Initiative a bit on that. So I'm just kind of here to learn the approach you all are choosing to take or working on figuring out, and hopefully that will help me with some of the coastal development. And yeah, just here to support also. It's exciting.
Great, thank you, Alexis. A few more people here. I've got Zach DeMar.
Hey, how are we doing? Zach Damari. I'm with the Natural Resource Conservation Services. I'm a soil conservationist in Roseburg, servicing Douglas and Josephine County. And I'm interested in native plants, specifically in conservation efforts on private lands, and more specifically about understories of oaks. So that's what I got.
Great, thank you, Zach. Next, I've got Morgan Fay.
Thanks, Tula. My name's Morgan. I am the site coordinator at Elkton Community Education Center. We have a native plant nursery, so I'm representing the nursery. I work a lot with the garden manager on our nursery expansion and partnerships. Kind of wearing two hats today. I'm also a local restoration ecologist, so I work with private landowners on reforestation, wetland mitigation, turtle pond habitat creation, those kind of things. So obviously sourcing native plants are also really important to me for those reasons as well. And something fun that kind of came online for us this year is we just got word that we've got approval for the 2021 Wings Across America U.S. Forest Service grant, which was a joint partnership with Deschutes Land Trust and a few other folks. But we'll be getting some milkweed seed and also some milkweed plants and be available for distribution next year. So we'll have more information about that as that comes online and as these conversations develop. So super excited to be here. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome, thanks, Morgan. Last person is Scott Kolpak.
Hi, Scott Kolpak. I'm area geneticist with the Forest Service, and interested in native plants and just their availability for different projects. And also really interested in oak conservation planting on the Umpqua that we're trying to do.
Okay, did I leave anybody out?
Did Becky say anything? I'm looking at my list, Tula, and I just want to make sure, trying to double check.
Yeah, she just said, go ahead, Becky.
I didn't say anything because I just finally got on. I'm Becky McCrae with the Glide Wildfire Show. And we were invited because we do an annual, hopefully back to in-person, native plant show in April of every year in the community building in Glide. Generally have over 600 species of native plants, and so we were invited to come in and listen in.
Awesome, glad you're here. So since we have a number of new people here, I'm going to give a little recap of where the Umpqua Native Plant Partnership has been so far, and then move into our current priorities. So back in April, Callie got together some folks from the Native Plant Society and some of the agencies to just have an exploratory meeting and get together and talk about whether a native plant partnership would be useful and what some of the needs are in the region. And the result of that meeting was basically an understanding that this would be necessary, would be helpful. And Callie sort of pulled us in at the Understory Initiative to help with this initial stage of partnership formation. And so that's when I sort of got involved, and we created a survey, and I'm going to share the results with you here. Most of you probably already took the survey, and it was just basically oriented around figuring out what people's projects are on the ground and what their barriers are to putting more native plants in them. So we had about 16 responses. Can everyone see the sheet with the graphs?
It looks
Yep.
good. You might want to zoom in a tiny bit if possible, Tula, but it looks good.
Okay, I think I can do that. So we asked, where are people from? The biggest category there was nonprofit, and the second biggest was government agency, and then some other folks from various other backgrounds also participated. We asked, what are you working on right now, and where could you use some native plant materials? And 2/3 of those were some kind of restoration project in the red and the blue here, either on public lands or on private lands. And then a variety of other projects as well. Some of these are obviously going to be overlapping or fit into multiple categories, like fire recovery, habitat restoration, demonstration gardens, and just propagation for putting those plants in the ground somewhere on the road. And we asked, are people interested in using native plants in general, in your experience? And the majority of you said yes, a lot of interest in that. And we asked, what are the barriers? What's keeping you from accessing those native plants? And the obvious answer there is a lack of sourcing, whether native seed, which is the gray part of the pie there, or orange is the lack of supply of plants. And there's a few other issues happening as well, whether it's an outreach problem or a sourcing problem, maybe something appears to be native that's actually from Washington or something like that. So those are the highlights of the survey. And I've since revamped it and kind of made it into a general survey to continue sharing with people as they come on board, become interested, so we can continue to gauge what their interests are and what their needs are, and be responsive to those. And I sent the link out to that in the last email, and I'll be sending it out again here in the near future. So if you haven't read it, just let me know. So the next step in our journey here was to organize a seed collection day. And we did that back in July at U Creek Land Alliance. So thanks to Ken for making that wonderful property out by, where is that? Near the Riddle, that's where it is, down in the South Umpqua available. And we had a successful seed collection day. The previous slide showed the group photo from that day. Looks like about 8 of us were there, and we collected a bunch of seed. I have them here in a spreadsheet, so this probably also needs to be a bit bigger. These are the species that we collected, and approximate weights. They haven't all been cleaned yet, but we are in the process, and hopefully, if someone jumps up and says, I really want to put in a bed of iris this fall, then we can hook them up with a bit of seed to get that going. We talked about a bit of species prioritization. What are our workhorse species? What do we really need to see out in the landscape? Is it grasses? Is it a riparian? And it kind of came down to all of the above and more, but we have some lists that we can also share that kind of break down what seeds we need to be looking for, and what we want to be growing out in the next couple of years. And in August, we had another meeting just with folks from the agency side. So Clint was there, Callie, Allison, a few others, just to talk about what the experience has been as a agency restoration practitioner, and what the potential might be in the future for either contracting with private growers to do more local seed production in the Umpqua, or some funding in the works to be able to move these projects forward. So where are we at now? We are continuing to develop this roadmap sort of based on what's worked in the in the Rogue and in other areas. And like I said, gathering information from the folks involved. And next steps are going to probably be developing the native plant materials infrastructure. So the farms to grow it out, the access to the equipment to get seed cleaned and processed and onto the next user, and developing leadership, and kind of going to be working the group here to see and get a feel for who has bandwidth, who has time and funding to start to implement all these ideas and goals. As we recognize that as Understory Initiative based in the Rogue Valley, we're not the ideal people to do the work on the ground in the Umpqua, but we're sure that somebody is out there who would be perfect for that role, or maybe it's a multiple somebody. So next I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, and she's done a lot of work developing sort of the process for how native seed gets produced and increasing quantities of native seeds. And just to assure you, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A after we've shared this information. So thanks for your attention. Go ahead, Catherine. Let's see, I need to probably.
I think I'm unmuted now. We're getting a little bit of feedback, I think maybe from the person on the phone. Is that you, Rod? I don't know if there's a way to mute on your end. It's not terrible. But
oh no, I don't have a way to do that.
Okay, well, it's not that bad. But if there was an easy way to deal with it, we may as well, but I'm not that worried about it. Hopefully everyone else feels the same way. So yeah, I guess some of the folks joined a little bit later. I'll just reiterate who I am. My name is Catherine Prive, and I have been working in the Rogue Valley to facilitate, plant partnership since 2016. And so I definitely have some lessons learned from that process. So we've been at it a few years, definitely learned a lot. I think, one of the main struggles we had is similar, where there's sort of this scarcity of plant materials, especially native seed for projects, both large and small. And I think also kind of worth understanding for folks that are a little bit new to these types of struggles is that the native plant production is a very complicated and sort of long process in a manner of speaking. It spans many years in a lot of cases, from coming up with a list of priority species and what you're going to need the plants or seeds for, to collecting those plants in native landscapes, figuring out where to collect them, when to collect them, collecting them, cleaning them, and then getting them to a grower. And then that grower has to start the process over again and put those seeds in the ground and wait for them to produce. And especially when you're talking about perennial species, you can wait 2 or 3 years or sometimes more to get your first crop of agriculturally produced seeds. So the timeline that you have to think about and plan for can sometimes be as long as 5 years, for example, to get from having an idea of, I really could use this seed, to I have a bag of seed in my hand that's of a quantity that's helpful. So with that in mind, one sort of product that the Rogue Native Plant Partnership has put together, and Tula helped me a lot with this, was developing like a business plan, as it were. There's maybe not like the best terminology for it, but I would call it a business plan. And it kind of breaks down some different strategies you could use to getting specifically native seed produced. And so what that looks like is sort of thinking about like different tracks of production. And so one example would be, seed lots, usually grasses, that are most economically produced on really large farms. Like we're talking, about 10 acres, 15 acres, where you need thousands and thousands of pounds. So, Clint was talking earlier about how, they had 1,000 pounds and it wasn't nearly enough. It's sort of that order of magnitude. And so those species really need a different type of production, a different type of farmer. And oftentimes those farmers are not local. They're, there's some places in Washington that grow at this scale. They're usually still in the Pacific Northwest, but they're not in Western Oregon or Southern Oregon or in the Umpqua. And then there's also like on the very other end of the spectrum, maybe really niche species that are only, occurring in wetlands, and they're really nitpicky to, collect, and they require, maybe they're a rare species or a listed species, and they need special handling, and you need basically a lot of time and attention to getting the right species and figuring out where the populations are, collecting them properly, growing them properly, and every little bit of seed you get is super precious and it's expensive. And you need a very specialized, grower who's willing to kind of deal with maybe the finickiness of that species. And so that's kind of like the way other end of like a grant subsidized, what we call diversity species. And then kind of in the middle are some of the growers that we've been working with here in the Rogue Valley, where they, we go and collect a small amount of seed, a couple of handfuls, depending on the seed size, and we can give that to them, and they turn it around and put it into maybe a 10th acre size production bed. And then that will yield, a couple pounds to, dozens of pounds. So sort of thinking about seed production on those different scales is kind of what this business plan gets at. And then the different timelines and costs that are associated with it. If any of you want to like really read it and get into the financials, I encourage you to go to the Rogue Native Plant Partnership website in the resources library, and you can download it and read it. I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty, but we do have 2 examples of species that would be potential ones that we could look at here in the Umpqua as, looking into what it would take to get some of them produced so they were available. So Tula, do you want to move to the next slide? And we can just go over those, I guess. And then any questions before I get into talking about species specifics or giving an example of the tracks. Okay, so just to sort of reiterate what I was saying and sort of bring the theoretic business plan to like a specific species. So LMS elamoides is a great example. Looks like you all collected an ounce of seed, which is not a lot. It's a relatively small amount. If you were to try to scale up production and give that to a large scale farmer, they're going to want 4, 5, 6 pounds, not 1 ounce. And so one of the tracks we've identified is sort of a stair-step model where you have a species that you really want a lot of. You want thousands of pounds, but for whatever reason, it's difficult to collect. It's hard to find big enough populations. And so you would go and collect what you can. And then you would potentially use a sort of intermediary grower to get enough seed to then stair step up to a larger production field. And so that increases the timeline, but it actually doesn't really increase the cost that much. Yes, you would pay that smaller intermediary grower kind of a higher rate per pound to make it economical for them. But by the time you get to that large scale production, if you look at the lifetime of that seed production cost, because you eventually get to the point where you grow it at such a large scale, a lot of those higher costs per pound sort of get absorbed into that higher production model. And then maybe go to the other one. Oh, sorry, I saw stair step. I was so excited about the stair step model. I think the slide previously was just that large scale production. And so for that, sorry, for LMS elamoides, yeah, you would collect enough to just send directly to a large scale grower. They would grow it at, 2 acres, 4 acres, whatever the size is. And then you get that pretty low $34 to $88 per pound rate. And a lot of the grasses are going to fit into that category. And we would just have to identify if there's enough funding to support, a large 10 acre, 4 acre grow out. And a lot of those growers, depending on what their requirements are, will require a down payment at the beginning, whether it's 10% or 50%. And so like identifying that we definitely have enough funding to support a grow out of that scale is really important for that track. And so then the next one we can talk about, this is a stair step model. And so the Clarkia, like I was saying, it's just a little bit trickier of a species to collect in large quantities. has pretty small seed. You know, if you find a really good patch, you can get a lot, but it actually just takes quite a bit of effort to get a really large amount of that seed. And so using that stair step model where you get enough for a smaller grower to do a year of production, and then they can harvest mechanically off of their field. And then finally you get to the point where you have 3 or 4 pounds, then you send that to the larger producer who can, you know, get you hundreds of pounds. And again, as I was saying, you have a little bit higher cost per pound usually in these scenarios, but it's not, on the grand scheme of things, especially for a forb, you know, to get $150 per pound is actually a pretty reasonable cost. It's a lot compared to agricultural seed. You know, if you're going to just buy a cover crop at the Grange or something, obviously, but for native seed and the time and effort it takes to get them produced, it's a pretty reasonable number. And then do you have one more slide, Tula? No, those are the 2 examples.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it looks like you have, again, if anyone wants to look at that business plan, I think we might adapt a version that's specific to the Umpqua once we start nailing down the species we're most interested in and try to cost out how much that would cost. And then that would help direct building grant proposals and you know, figuring out how we would do the contracting to get to the point of actually getting some things produced for your area.
Great, thank you, Catherine. Does anyone have questions about the overall process of native seed production as we've presented it here that Catherine or I can answer? Okay, so I just wanted to point out that native seed, of course, is just one side of the equation, and a lot of you mentioned a need for plugs and plants to be able to put in the ground. In other words, containerized stock. And that's another big piece of the puzzle that you know, we need to work on strategies for talking to growers, talking to native plant nurseries, and finding out, you know, what's keeping them from producing those native plants. And I just wanted to include the link in here to the Rogue Native Plant Partnership website, because we do have a good resource list available for anyone who is interested in growing native plants in that capacity. There's a lot out there for them to read. And of course, we're always available to have further discussions about that too. But primarily the focus so far has been on seed. So I wanted to open it up a little bit and just have an open-ended discussion about what the needs are in the Umpqua and how you see these pieces all fitting together. One of the things that has been emphasized from our agency partners so far is, you know, to get funding, we need shovel-ready projects, things that we can start implementing now. So I'd like to do a little brainstorming about what those would be.
Becky, it looks like you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Ellie. I'm interested in still in collecting these seeds or growing these seeds. Do you contact places like Heritage Seedlings in Salem?
And that would be one option. It just depends on, you know, if they're interested in producing for a certain market, or if there's somebody more local who would like to do it. And I think one of the goals of the partnership is to keep that money cycling through the local economy. So when there's a local grower available, we'd like to see them do it. But maybe someone else has a perspective on that.
No, I was just curious because I am also president of the North Umpqua Foundation, and we just purchased some seeds for the BLM to distribute seeds in their wetlands and other areas. And that's the only reason I know anything about Heritage Seedlings. So it was just a question.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, and Heritage Seedlings, I'll just pipe in, you know, they're based out of Corvallis, I believe, and they do amazing work. And we definitely work closely with them to have certain species grown out, or, you know, for some of the projects that are a little farther north, especially, they have seed lots that they've sort of keep in production, and you can just sort of buy off the shelf more or less. And so they are a great resource. But I do agree with Tula that, you know, if there's a way to encourage some folks in the Umpqua to, you know, produce some of these native plant materials, that helps everybody. And I also do know that Linda Boyer at Heritage, you know, can, like, they fill up their space, and I feel like they're operating kind of at capacity. And I know the growers down here in the Rogue Valley are kind of at that, you know, operated at capacity. So I think that there's definitely room in the market to, you know, increase what we grow locally. And I'd like to see that happen. And then using those other outside growers as sort of like a backup plan. And Kelly, you are next. You want to go, and then Clint after that? I'm sorry, Kelly, you're having a bad internet day. I can't hear you. We just hear like little beep, bop, boop computer noises. I'm sorry. Clint, go ahead.
Hey, Callie. Yeah, we can't really understand anything you said there, unfortunately. I'm sure it was words of wisdom, but the main question I wanted to ask was what's been done so far to determine what the needs are in the Umpqua Basin? Do you guys have a needs determination kind of already done, or are you thinking of putting that into place? One of the big things that I found over the years is that the demand for native seed is super volatile. And one of the biggest reasons I'm starting to realize that is because of the differences in skills and understanding of the people who use it, or perception of what they should use or need. And this is an example that just came up from the fires. You know, the Umpqua forest is down. They really don't have any botanists on the forest. There's one person, and she's kind of unfortunately had some health issues. Somebody, Becky, you're not muted there. We can hear you. There we go. So we've got, you know, a situation where we had all these fires and, you know, 37 miles of bulldozer line and, you know, I don't know how many acres of safety zones and stuff. And when it came time to develop a seed plan to determine what the need was for revegetation, there really was nobody who knew how to do that, or where to start, or even how you go about figuring out how much native seed is needed. And so I kind of entered the fray, as it's gotten kind of awkward for me because I'm like the boss or whatever kind of person that doesn't interact on the ground with people. And when I tried to kind of help out, you know, it's kind of like, well, we don't need to talk to the natural resource staff officer to figure out how to, you know, reseed some of this work. But at the end of the day, I was the only person who'd ever done it. So I kind of, you know, got into that, and I realized how, at least on the Forest Service, there is a major, I guess people call it a brain drain or whatever you want to call it, but there's just a lack of skills in place any longer that create the demand for the seed. So this is a long story short kind of thing here. What's being done to determine, like, for instance, have you guys considered like maybe creating a map? I feel like we kind of did that on the Rogue Siskiyou, Catherine, where we sat down with the people who would need the seed, develop a map of the projects for the next 5 years or something like that. And then you could work backwards and determine, okay, we need, you know, I would say on the Umpqua forest, we need to have anywhere from 7,000 to 15,000 pounds of some sort of seed pretty much always available at this point. You know, maybe it's different on the BLM and the other places, but I do think it would be good to figure that out. So I just wanted to talk about that. Anybody have any?
Tula, do you want to speak to, I think that the prioritization that we've done has really just been a first survey. That was pretty general, but we kind of do want to hone in a little bit more. And I kind of see that conversation, Clint, as being a product of sort of further development of the partnership. I think that like what we see our role as with TUI is to set up a framework so that a coordinator could be recruited in the area that could step in and start to really dive into those details. Because I do think it does take quite a bit of time and effort. And our funding is really just to like get the bare bones of a partnership initiated. And so, yeah, I think having somebody who would have the skills, and I think we could help provide some assistance with, knowing how to develop a seed mix and what the ins and outs of that would look like and support that person, whoever they might be. And it looks like Callie is able to talk too. So does that answer your question, Clint? And then maybe we could go back to Callie.
I guess the answer is that it's premature is what I hear you saying a little bit. And, but I do think that now, pun intended, this is when you sow the seeds of that aspect, which is really the driver of everything else. So the demand, like this is the funny part, like I work on a group as part of the national seed strategy, and everybody's kind of philosophy is we just need to produce tons of seed. It's like, I call it the field of dreams, right? Most people are familiar with that movie, the Field of Dreams, right? You build this field and these ghosts will come play on it. That's kind of what a lot of people use. So they're working from the point of view is we just need to get a bunch of seed and then it'll get used. Where I just want people to think also from the other end of it, what's actually driving it, because the demand, I think, is the biggest problem. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. That's a really good point to make, that we don't want to just get a bunch of people involved and have a bunch of seeds out there being grown without a destination in mind. And I think that's the way we've sort of built the Rogue Plant Partnership as well, is not to promise anybody anything, not to say, if you produce 10 acres of grass seed, then it'll all be sold and you'll be rich. But, getting people to talk to each other, having, for instance, BLM say, okay, we're definitely going to need X amount, in 5 years or whatever. And then the partnership can really function.
Yeah, and if you can get the growers out there, if you can get a list of projects, and I found this to work one time where the growers came out and looked at some of the projects and they're like, oh, it just creates a much greater understanding of what the demand is, because for a lot of growers, there's just so much risk involved in this. So, but I don't want to eat up, let's go to Kelly. Hopefully he can get his question.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I will.
Yeah.
Sound great.
Okay. Well, in essence, a good hallmark of a great partnership is that someone like Clint can essentially say what I was going to say anyway. So that you did perfect, my man. So that's kind of in essence what I was about to say anyway, was that the hallmark of just keeping local, keeping things local, not having to buy outsourced seeds, and be looking for being able to do a lot of the stuff more locally in the Umpqua, like growing seeds, collecting the seeds, growing the seeds. And it's by no means to put folks like Linda Boyer and Heritage Seeds out of business, but as Catherine said, we've got to be looking at we got to be looking outside the Umpqua. We got to be looking outside to understand what everybody else's limitations are, and then step up to the challenge. And Clint, essentially said it, put it in play by saying, if we build the field, we'll get the seeds to come. And I think that's really the basis of today's meeting and where we can grow from here. So, but I know I had something else I was going to pontificate about, but I'll remember it later in a second. So.
Hey, Tula, this is Morgan. Can I jump in for a second?
Go for it.
Sweet. Okay. I love the conversation here. I just wanted to throw out the out there to everyone. Just with ECEC, we do. So we are obviously, I think I mentioned this earlier, the native plant nursery, where we grow a wide range of native like shrubs, pollinator friendly perennials, and milkweed, trees and shrubs. Yeah. So we've pretty much honed in on being really successful at doing small to medium scale grow outs or contract grows for restoration work. And we don't currently grow out grass seed, but looking at your business plan model, that intermediary person that's kind of growing out that 1 ounce to that 3 to 4 pounds before it goes into a larger production stage, I could see ECEC as being a good fit. And I just wanted to throw that out there as we're having these conversations. That was it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's great to know.
You're welcome. And it's local, and we do a lot of native plant work for, I think a lot of the folks on this call even recognize, doing work with. Hey, so be happy, to talk about that with my team. If those, if that conversation goes in that direction, it's needed.
And I think just to maybe add a little bit of, I don't know, more information about what being a grower might look like for any of you that, come across folks who might have that capacity. In the Rogue Native Plant Partnership, we've really tried to come up with systems and strategies that better support growers. And so a couple examples are having seed cleaning equipment made available that's sort of community-wide held. And so growers would have access to having, being able to be trained on that equipment and then being able to use it. And then we also have kind of like a hybrid contracting model that we use where, a lot of growers will just say, this is how much I charge for this number of bed feet, and they get a flat fee no matter how much seed is produced. And that kind of is a little bit challenging for certain grants that are relying on, if a plant crop fails, then they can't get the deliverable for that grant. So that can be challenging. And then on the other side of it, the other model that sometimes happens is growers will say, this is my price per pound. And then if they don't produce anything, they've put all that time and effort into it. And it could just be, an act of nature, a drought, some unforeseen disease, or maybe just bad seed germination. And they don't get any money. And so then that adds to what Clint was saying about the ups and downs and the risk. And so we have a hybrid model that I think might be helpful for growers to, part of it is an advance payment to say, we're definitely going to guarantee that you're getting paid for some of the effort to put these plants into production at the beginning of the process. And then there's also a price per pound that kind of gets added into the mix that, will encourage folks to produce as much seed as possible and reward really good harvests. But so it kind of go both ways. And that's been one way that we've found to help support growers and not make it as risky. And so I could definitely see implementing some of that stuff. And that's nice because we've already developed it. We can just steal it and bring it north. Allison, do you want to pipe in?
The hand doesn't mean I'm not on mute. I just had a quick question, sort of follow up for Morgan. I was wondering if, in my experience with the ECEC, it seems like you mostly have container plants. Do you also have beds or fields, or would you have the capacity for growing species in a field or a bed?
Yeah, Allison, we do. I think we've done some years back. We did do a few seed grow outs for a project on the coast. It's not something that we typically do. Like you mentioned, a lot of our stuff is more container stock that we either start from cuttings on site, or, we bringing in, starts and stuff and then growing those out. We have branched into expanding for contract grows for bare roots. So there's 5 that we grow really well on site, and we've started doing those more in a smaller, that we're still kind of stuck in the container stock format for whatever reason. I think it's just because of the way we've always done things, but we have expanded the nursery. We do have fields, and that scale would work really well for us. And we, would love to see more native plants out there. So it would be conducive, for us to have a seed source as well to grow out more plants for the public. So I think it's doable. If there would be I would need to have a bigger conversation, but I could see it being a fit if there was an opportunity for, if it made sense, of course.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So another thing I wanted to throw out there was the need for some local seed storage and infrastructure, or just a location for doing some of the seed processing. Does anybody have ideas around that?
Can you ask that question again?
Yeah, so here in the Rogue Partnership, we've managed to partner with an organization that has a barn and a place we can keep a freezer for our supplies, our bag collections. And we're thinking that something like that would be helpful to have in Roseburg or some other central location in the Umpqua, for folks to start, if there was more seed collection happening down the road, which we hope there would be, to be able to store those seeds locally. If anybody has access to facilities or storage space of that kind.
This is Haley Smith from Dorena. We do have that capacity. We have both a freezer as well as a seed cooler. Our freezer is kept at -20 degrees Celsius. And we could talk about it for smaller scale things, not the entirety of your grow outs, but for those smaller scale collections, we'd be happy to talk with that about our capacity to find some storage space for you guys. And we're located in Cottage Grove.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that great discussion. I'll go back to our presentation here. There it goes. So the next thing I want to talk about was the idea of having a local coordinator for the partnership based in the Umpqua. And the person doing this work would be primarily functioning as a partnership hub. So someone who can run the meetings like this one and organize events around seed collection and partnership development. We would probably want somebody obviously who knows the native flora and who has an idea of what plants get used in restoration projects and some idea about how to grow them. So we came up with a proposal for this position and kind of outlining the responsibilities and the hours and what kind of duties they would be doing. We came up with a $55,000 budget, and that's for over 2 years for someone to work part-time. The way that could operate is either they would be an independent contractor or as a employee of an existing organization, a nonprofit. And so I'm curious about thoughts around that. If there are ways for anyone to incorporate these duties with their current work, and then of course, any funding opportunities that people know of that we could apply to start to get these funds to the hopefully fiscal sponsor of the organization.
Don't everybody jump up and speak all at once.
So Tula, are you asking us like to nominate people or just seeing if we ourselves are available? You know, like, sorry.
I'm thinking if anybody has capacity within their current life to add some of these responsibilities to their job, or if you can think of an organization that would be able to act as a fiscal sponsor and then hire another person to do this work. Because currently the Umpqua partnership is just a meeting place, right? We don't have a nonprofit status or if any bank accounts. We're just getting people together. So for this partnership to continue with somebody at the helm coordinating it locally, would need a nonprofit or another organization to step up and be the fiscal sponsor, and then to have a coordinator working for them or at least paid through them. That
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I probably have capacity and I'd be interested. So I'll chat with RED and just, I mean, I can at least get the conversation started and see if, as the nonprofit, if they wanted to step up. And also as a restoration ecologist, I don't know, if I could just step up as well, but yeah. And then would it be a group decision if we all threw names in a hat? Then, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of people jumping up so far, but I think there's capacity through ECEC. I'd be willing. So I guess let me just leave that there and I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'll support Morgan on that. I think she would do an awesome job at what you guys are needing. So I would support
I
that.
was just going to add to the flavor here for everyone's own edification. The good folks here in Tula at the understory, have graciously offered up this blueprint as I'd asked them to do, knowing full well that they have a finite existence, I guess, in the Umpqua from that perspective. Obviously willing to help as needed along the way, but having someone, and thank you, Morgan, for maybe taking a look into like the potential leadership. But the goal has always been to kind of get someone locally led, someone local to locally lead the organization. You're going to have, a little selling point, I guess, would be you've got a lot of backers, as Clint just said. I think everybody on this call would continue to back any individual or organization that would step up and take the lead. And that's part of, I think that's part of, that's a good result, I guess, if you will, from Catherine and Tula's and others, the understory initiatives lead down in the Rogue, it's made that native plant partnership so successful. And I don't want to leave Alexis out too. Her leadership, both for the coastal partnership and up in the Willamette Valley, have been those are three prime examples, I guess, of very successful native plant partnerships, and why almost a dedicated leader is needed, just to cat herd all the things that go into play, whether it's infrastructure, as Tula alluded to earlier, growers, contracting, doing financial assistance agreements and having the infrastructure to handle that kind of stuff, figuring out what everybody's needs are, and who can bring what to the table and who needs what, I think is all these different puzzle pieces is really what that kind of person would be handling. So again, it's not, I don't think we expect to handpick somebody today, but I think the idea is to just for what Tula's put forward here and about this is what it takes. And I think if you, Morgan, have an interest in it, or others, if there's somebody else, I think it's good to have a lot of different options out there at the moment. So that was my other pontification I was going to say earlier.
And I just wanted to pipe in and say that this would by no means be like, okay, handing it off, like, see ya. I think that, and I bet Alexis would agree with this as well, that, we as coordinators of other plant partnerships would really want to support whoever took the lead in the Umpqua to learn from all of our mistakes and then also things that worked well and make it as easy as possible. I know that I took a lot of what I did from the Willamette Valley Partnership that preceded me. And so I would be very excited to share all of our information and everything that we have to offer, copy, plagiarize, take it all. That would be our intent, and then to be collaborators in the future. But I think that we've learned that having somebody locally on the ground to watch the phenology of the plants and make sure we're collecting seed at the right time is just the right way to do it, as opposed to relying on people driving from the Rogue Valley or wherever to, you can miss things really easily if you're not local.
Mhm.
Just to chime in, I just agree with all that. Coordination is extremely important to getting this work accomplished and getting seed on the ground. And I'm also happy to support and help as needed, but I'm also here learning too. So.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Morgan. I think the next step would be locating some funding for this position, whether it's through a cooperative agreement with one of the agencies, or if there's a separate source of grant funds that we could apply for. So I welcome anyone with ideas to chime in or to email me later if you come across something that seems like it would be a good fit. And I will probably start the process from our end of searching for some opportunities to get funds. Looks like Clint has something to say.
Oh, yeah, well, I was going to wait till you were done, but yeah, I think that the Umpqua National Forest has funding from both the KV money, which is something I did in agreement with Catherine before on, but also I think right now is tough because it's like the fiscal year just started a couple weeks ago and things don't look very good. But we're all hoping that this infrastructure bill is going to pass, and there could be a pretty significant windfall of money. And also, I think that there's some lobbying or whatever that I could do with folks on the Umpqua to see about, small amounts of money. So it would be similar, Catherine, to the Rogue Native Plant Partnership, where the Forest Service could piece together with the Fish and Wildlife Service, hopefully the BLM. And I mean, other than that, who else on this call is willing to pony up money? I don't know. Do you guys know?
I believe when I was sitting at the meeting in Roseburg, I think I distinctly say, if you need money, Callie, I can get you money, is what she said. Right, May? I put her on the spot. She's probably like fumbling to find the mute button right now. I'm just giving you a hard time, Ma.
Well, not a problem that needs to be solved overnight. And we are still, like Catherine said, happy to work on the project and keep things bare minimum. Continuing to run meetings and field questions for the foreseeable future from our end. So another aspect of leadership and organizational development that I thought would be good to put on the table is developing an MOU, and I might put Catherine on the spot to talk about that a bit more, since you were part of the MOU creation with our NPP. So what's sort of the advantages to having that document in place, and what does it look like, Catherine?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to the MOU. For anyone who's unfamiliar, MOU just stands for Memorandum of Understanding. And this is just a document that the way I like to phrase it is sort of like our rules of, or like what we want to get out of the partnership and like just our agreement to play nicely together in the sandbox. There's nothing like that obligates anybody to spend money. There's nothing scary or sort of obligatory about it. It's more just, you know, we want to cooperate on these specific issues. And I think the reason that you put in the effort for a document like this is it makes getting grants a lot easier. Like if the federal entities see that you have an MOU or a memorandum of understanding, it just kind of adds that sense of seriousness and official seemingness to the agreement, and just having things written down on paper also allows for transparency and the ability to look back and say, you know, this is what we set out to do and how well did we achieve those things. Another thing that we have built in our area is a 5-year strategic plan, and that came after the MOU. So the MOU is like just a foundational document that just says we all agree to play nicely together and here's what we can all bring to the table. And then after that, you can kind of go from there. But Alexis, would you agree that having an MOU is an important thing to put time and energy into as well?
Yeah, I think so. For the coast, we pretty much just copied the Willamette Valley MOU. We had a few edits for some of the federal agencies, mainly the BLM, I think, had difficulty signing. But I do think it really provides a good sense of partnership and ownership as you're developing things. And then for the Willamette Valley, they actually require that you have a signed MOU to buy seed. So, which I think we're doing for the coast as well. But yeah, I think it could be a simple document. I think, yeah, I'd be happy to share our version with the group anytime.
Any other questions about an MOU? I think that would be something that a coordinator would kind of shepherd us through the process, because getting some of the federal entities to sign a document like that takes a little bit of time, but we've done enough of these at this point where a lot of the language is really familiar to the grants and agreements folks. And so I don't think it would be a barrier, but it just takes a little bit of time and effort. And I think after we get funding for a coordinator, that would be a great first deliverable to just get knocked off the list.
So this is Rod Trotter, and I'm sure we can come up with that as a group, something like that. I have some things I wanted to share. One is that we do kind of have a contact, Mike Madsen of Wildwood Nursery. He and his wife, Selena, are really into growing native plants. And they have, I don't know how much ground they have, but I know for sure that Mike could be interested in doing larger grow outs. So that's something anyway. Certainly, I mean, for myself, I know how to collect and grow plants out. But so I have the how. I sure don't have the ground or the energy.
What was the name of that nursery again?
Wildwood.
Wildwood. And what was your name? It doesn't pop up. I'm sorry.
Just across there, you know, you go through Winston, and on your way to Dillard, it's right across the bridge on the left-hand side of the road. It's right there. It's actually the oldest nursery in the county. It's been there for quite a long time. There's been some really, you know, interesting owners there, and there's all kinds of old cultivars that they've come up with, planted here and there. It's a pretty interesting place, but like I said, they're really into it.
That's really cool. Thank you.
And we are doing, you know, we have a little garden there, and we're going to be expanding that as far as that goes. You know, myself, I can probably come up with quantities like about a cup, or maybe a couple of cups. But you know, from some little things, germinate up bigger things, don't they?
Well, I think we just mapped out the whole business plan, sir. You can do the small, collect the 1 ounces. We'll grow them out at ECEC, get a few pounds, and we'll send them over to Wildwood. Keep it all local. Done. Next world problem. No, I'm kidding.
Consider it coordinated.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks. And that was Rod Trotter from the Native Plant Society for Morgan. If you didn't catch his name.
Thank you, Tula.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Rod.
Zach has his hand up.
This is MA.
Yeah.
My phone just fell on the floor, and I just got back and I missed the whole thing about Wildwood, but I am in Winston at this moment, and as soon as the meeting's over, I'm going to Wildwood. And I don't know if Michael's there, but anyhow, what is it? Can you give me something really fast, like what we're talking about, Wildwood?
Well, MA, this is Rod again. MA, I just was saying that they're really into growing native plants, and they have the ability to, do larger grow outs. I don't know how much, but.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Rod, and I was thinking just before my phone hit the floor that I would probably offer the same thing or say the same thing you just did. I think Michael would probably like going for this. What do you think about, Donna?
Yeah, I think he would, MA. It would take some coordinating and different things, talking with him to make sure, to develop the land and stuff. He's got the land. I don't know how much of that particular growing he's done, but we can check with him for sure.
Yeah.
And he's not
Well,
he's not very
skills.
technical, so otherwise he would probably be on this call.
Yeah. I agree. Should I say anything to him? We all, the three of us that know him, kind of feel like this might be one place, at least here in this area.
Yeah,
and
you could
place is-
mention it.
Okay.
Yeah, you could mention that. I just don't know how much information he has yet.
Yeah. Anyhow, well, I'll tell him, I can tell him that I highly doubt he's there, Donna, but I'm just going to stop by because I'll be going pretty close to him when I get out of this parking lot or when this meeting gets over. So anyway, I think that he's interested in all this kind of stuff. So I think that's a good thing for us anyhow. I'm done.
Okay. I think Zach has a comment.
Yeah, I just had a general question. I think what I'm hearing is ideally the seed would be collected in the Umpqua, grown in the Umpqua, and then planted out in the Umpqua. But is there ethics between like where the seed's collected and where it's grown? Is there rationale for why we do those?
I think the main concern is having local genetics in the seed, and obviously want to do our seed collection in native habitats that have a healthy population of seeds, so that we're not depleting those populations, but that also we know are wild and that possess those local genetics. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, like if you got the local seed, then if you went to, let's say, Corvallis and planted them, is there anything wrong with that?
Oh, yeah. So the general practice is to be able to grow out a seed for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And Catherine has more specific information about that. But the genetics are not usually considered to be impacted, for a couple of years growing out in a different location.
Okay, thanks. That was basically my question.
Hey, another aspect of that, Zach, is assisted migration. And so that's essentially taking seed from, in our case, it would be more arid locations So one thing to consider with this is the Umpqua is kind of sitting in a pretty good position because in the Rogue Valley between the Rogue River Siskiyou, the Medford BLM, and then the Rogue Native Plant Partnership, there may be a lot more seed available coming up from the south, which I think is a good, I don't know that we should like do this wholesale at all at this point, but I think we could start looking at certain projects where we bring seed from, you know, further south, basically up north for climate change adaptation.
Thank you.
Scott, I don't know if you're still on the call, but this might be your realm. Can you speak to the assisted migration and genetics of seed increase or anything of that matter? Do you want to add to that conversation at all?
I don't have much to add with the seed increase genetics. I don't have the background in that, but I think I've heard the similar idea that a grow out, you know, for a couple of years isn't, you're not getting too many foreign genes into your population. But for the assisted migration piece, yeah, I mean, I've done a lot, you know, looking at climates for conifer movement, and I definitely agree that Rogue to Umpqua is a pretty good potential idea. Surprisingly, Umpqua to Willamette Valley, you know, just isn't as climatically similar. But I don't think we were talking about that anyways. But so it's a, you know, it gets into the details a little bit, but it's worth looking at it and just knowing what you're moving, basically, or what the climates are you're moving to.
I will, you know, since we're talking about climate change, this morning I had a meeting for the Rogue Native Plant Partnership. Our steering committee met, and we are starting to kind of plan for future grant writing proposals. And one idea that we came up with that I think might be applicable as kind of a climate change type of conversation is getting to the point of having basically an action plan for these disturbance events, like these large fires that are going to be a part of our future, and thinking about how we would be prepared with seed and plant materials when that happens in the future and not being as caught off guard. And so having like a post-disturbance seed mix, or at least the building blocks of getting to the point of ramping up production to have something like that be available ahead of time, and writing grant proposals that sort of speak to the climate change adaptation strategy on those terms. And then maybe part of that seed mix could involve some species from the Rogue Valley that have some of the genetics that are a little bit more adapted to drier climates. So I thought that was just a really interesting idea, and I intend to pursue it down here, and it might be something that we could find kind of a parallel grant proposal for in the Umpqua, or even just have a bigger proposal that includes the Umpqua when we do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I second that motion just generally. I mean, I think Clint would probably have a similar point of view. I mean, at least on the Forest Service side, once we had a big fire here, we realized on the Forest Service side what we didn't have. And a lot of this low elevation along the kind of the river corridors. And so having that planning process about just, you know, big events like that is really a smart idea.
Go ahead, Haley.
Just because we're talking about seed mixes post-fire restoration, I find one of the things that we do have an issue with is seed longevity and storage. these grasses particularly only last approximately 5 years. So while people might put a lot of effort into grow outs and collecting seed, oftentimes the mixes don't last until they're actually needed. So I always like to talk about the idea of adding in seeds of varying longevities into these seed mixes when it comes to consideration for post-fire rehabilitation, because it's really sad to have, 200 pounds of seed that are just dying day by day.
Yeah, Haley,
This is Rod Strider. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, Haley, that's exactly what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about earlier, working from the ground backwards so that we minimize that. It's tough with the fires though, right? Because I don't know though, it seems at this point that the Umpqua National Forest is good for probably at least a 50,000 acre fire. Hate to say that, but it's starting to appear that way every season. Which it begs the question, how much forest is there to burn, before, but what we're seeing is tons of reburn. So it's just going to go on and on, but definitely strategizing better about what, like you're saying, the types of species, the longevity of the seed, all that data could really help with creating a proper kind of strategy. So go ahead, whoever was chiming in there, go ahead.
Okay, this is Rod. I have a fair amount of experience growing out various native seeds over many, many years. And I know that lots of them are really only good in the next year. Some of them might last 3 or 4 years or 5 years, but lots of them are just, they're right now, and that's just about all there is to it.
Yeah, those can always be stretched with really good storage conditions that are extremely specific to some species. So I'm always willing to talk about that if you guys ever want or are curious about specific storage mechanisms.
Haley, is there any way to share your data on those species that might pertain to our area? Or like, what would it take to pick your brain in the way that would not take too much of your time? Like, even if we're just sifting through data, what would that look like?
Yeah, well, I don't have that kind of, I haven't done a study like that, but it's just my experience. I know that if from, my experience saving seeds of all kinds, in particular vegetables and stuff, if you can bring the moisture content down, say below 15%, then you can freeze it usually for a long time.
Were you asking Haley for that data as well, Catherine?
Yeah, I guess I was curious to know what it would take I'm always interested in having, firsthand knowledge. Rod, sort of what's in your brain is just experiential, but also I know there's probably a lot of data that's being collected at nurseries, especially on the federal side. I know down here, I've been wanting to get my hands on the seed increase data for Stone Nursery, and then also the Bend Seed Extractory, to just sort of get at, maybe learn some things from what they've experienced. And I know they keep really good records. So when we get to the point of having a coordinator, I think that would be a great opportunity if any of you have ideas on where we could pile some data on somebody and look at what we can learn just by things that have already happened and not have to relearn how to not do things. And I see that Justy has a hand up, and then Allison.
Hey, yeah, so I just wanted to chime in and say that we probably don't want to be in the business, at least the agencies, of stockpiling seed, because that never goes well. Rats eat it or it goes bad, the things you guys have been talking about. But kind of what Clint was talking about, like I expect that we're going to burn every year from here on out. That I think that's just a given, that the Umpqua will be burning, or will be burning, or we'll both be burning, or we'll all be burning multiple times. So as far as that kind of balance between having the seed available and storing it and how much is going out, I think that'll be tricksy to figure out exactly, but there is a need, and I think it's going to continue, and I would think it might be a little bit stable in some ways. Maybe it'll be less volatile than in the past, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good, sobering point. It's maybe not what we want. I don't want to have, catastrophic fires be the reason that we have a stable seed infrastructure, but I think that might be where we're at.
We've been stockpiling seed for 50 years at Dorina, so I'm always going to advocate for it.
You probably have better storage than we do.
Did you still have a comment, Allison?
I'm hesitating to ask. I was hoping Justy would mention this, but then Justy said we shouldn't store seeds. So now I don't know if I should even bring it up. But I just thought, since we've got Forest Service and BLM and Fish and Wildlife on the call right now, to mention that we're in the process of building a new facility for the Forest Service on our existing campus. So we'll be an interagency campus, and BLM has storage for their conifers, I think. And we're going through this remodel of the existing facilities right now for the next like 6 months or something. So I don't know if it's a good idea, but if we wanted to build into that remodel process some storage capacity for our group, it might be beneficial to know size and specs and what we might be looking at to pass on if we wanted to have something like that for this group at our interagency facility. Yeah, that's all. I just wanted to bring that up because we're gonna have an interagency team in the next couple years at one place, so it might be a good opportunity for storage there. But maybe, like Justy said, it's not. I don't know.
I think it's a great idea, actually, because basically, you're looking at a transition here. Now would be the time, although maybe it's too late already to bring that into any plans. But of course, the next step is they're probably going to say, well, where's the money going to come from to be able to have a facility? But, maybe the 3 different agencies could pony up some money. I don't know how much it would potentially cost to get something viable, but it's worth looking into.
Yeah, so basically for BLM anyways, we were asked for storage needs, and we've needed a place to store seed here because we don't have a good spot. Allison, we store seeds sometimes in that cooler for trees, but we always get kicked out because we have conifers come in and they're more important. So I have asked for some space, and I can't remember how much, but it's not enough for everyone. But I do think that's a conversation to have, and that Fish and Wildlife and Forest Service we should all talk about if that's something we should pursue. And there's probably still time, but we would need to get on it like pronto.
Do you think we would we need to know estimated size and capacity and what we should be thinking about? Like, would it be helpful to hear from folks down in the road, what they've seen, or maybe from Haley or somebody else, like what we might want to plan for?
Yeah, that would totally be helpful. The only kind of thing I've had in mind is when I worked on a different national forest that we had just a Connex box that we'd retrofitted, and we were storing like California transportation seed and BLM and Forest Service there. We just had shelves set up, but I don't know. You guys probably have seen better setups than that, and that's kind of the only decent setup I've seen. We certainly don't have it right now, and that's why I put in for like, I want this climate controlled space that's, you know, rodent proof. So but Allison, I'd have to check to see how much square footage I actually ask for, and I don't know if there's any guarantee I'm getting that, but I did put in for it. So yeah, if people have ideas, it'd be great to send them our way, and or maybe send them to Allison. Maybe you can be in charge of collecting info.
Yeah, I volunteered to be on that remodel team, but then was appointed from our office. So I don't mind like bugging, you know, Steve or whoever else about what we might be looking for. I'd be willing to try, you know, see what we can do.
Okay, cool.
Okay, bye to Alexis, and thank you for joining us. Looks like she's got to run. That's really great to hear, Allison, about the remodel, and I would certainly advocate for having a dedicated plant partnership seed storage space in there. Our MVP has been working with just a couple of regular upright household freezers, bins that, you know, to store seeds inside those freezers, and you know, maybe like a 1-car garage size area. Now we need more space because we've amassed some other seed cleaning equipment and more seeds that are being grown by private landowners. But just to start off with, you know, it's a minimal amount of storage space, but it does need to be there, and depending on, you know, what the seed cleaning needs are, it could be more space than that. Okay, well, I feel like we've had a really great conversation, and I just wanted to make sure we have answered everybody's general questions about native plant partnership needs, and then have some clear idea of where we're going from here. So, you know, feel free to raise your hand or put a question in the chat box if that's your style. But my best ideas for going forward are to take a harder look at where some funding might come from for a coordinator, and also get that MIU maybe started, at least in verbiage, so people can start to think about whether that's something they'd be able to participate in. Have a next meeting, a general meeting, probably early spring. We're thinking February, unless folks have other thoughts about timing for that. Great.
So as far as the funding goes, I mean, who are you hoping is going to talk about that, or what? So I see 55,000 roughly needed for a 2-year to kind of get this thing kicked off. To me, that's like, okay, 20,000 from the Forest Service, 20 from BLM, and 20 from Fish and Wildlife. I don't think I hear anybody else on here or any other group that it could bring money to the table. Is that what you heard too, or did you hear there could be other?
I think we're the likely candidates.
I think you're likely.
Yeah, that's the way it usually. That's the way it usually is. It's no big deal. So really, it's a matter of Callie, Amanda, myself, Justy probably talking and seeing if we can pony up, right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's do that then. And again, I do think that Morgan would be a good person to coordinate this because she is local. She has good native plant experience. And I think the Elkton Education Center is a really cool thing in Douglas County. So
Let us know, Morgan, what you find out from your board and your executive director.
Will do. Thank you, Cal, and thank you, Clint. Very kind. And I'll throw this out here. I'm gonna, I didn't say anything about funding, but of course, I'll bring the conversation back to my executive director, and if there's any funding opportunity, we'll bring that forward as well.
yeah, even if there was like matching time or something like that, whatever there is. So
Okay. Thank you, Clint.
Great. Well,
Good
thank
stuff.
you, everybody. I don't have any other items, so I guess we can all filter out unless people have other final thoughts or questions. But I just really appreciate everyone's time and coming together to have this conversation, and I think it's really going to pay off for the projects that we're all working on and for the habitat down the road. So.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Well,
I just want to say that sometimes these things take a little bit of time to come together, but it is really worth it to see it through. And I do think that if we build it, they will come has worked for us in the Rogue. And so I encourage that.
thank you. I
Great-
just have
great
to
summary.
say that this has been very interesting and rather exciting, actually.
I agree with Rod. This is MA. I was off on a phone call too, so Donna, I might ask you to fill me in on some things. And I just want to tell you, it was Peggy who called me and she said hi to everybody.
All right.
Well, I just want to say, a big thanks to everybody that's thrown in, joined up, and big thanks to the Understory Initiative folks for doing all the collaboration that you've done. You've brought the initiative that I
We lost you again, Kelly.
Kelly, I'm so sad. I love your closing words.
Put it in the chat. And we'll get some notes together too for everyone, and maybe send out the recording as well. So we'll have all of this.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
take care.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tula.
Bye.
Bye-bye.